Welcome to Live at 5. Thank you for joining us. Now what we've done is we've started studying the book of Colossians. The book of Colossians was written by the Apostle Paul when he was in Rome. He was under arrest. And he hears a man by the name of Epaphras comes to him and saying, listen, false teachers are coming into the churches in Colossae. And they're teaching basically that Jesus was insufficient for salvation. And he wasn't really God. And so Paul, of course, writes out a letter to the churches in Colossae. And he first talks about salvation. And then he talks about walking worthy of that salvation. We want to continue that thought. We're going to start off in verse 10. This is what he says. He says, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing him, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. The first thing he talks about is bearing fruit. When we walk a worthy life, when we are living for the Lord, we will bear fruit. People will see our lives. People will see that we have changed, that Jesus Christ has come into our life and has changed us. And so he says, walk that type of life. Walk a life obeying the Lord, living for him, because there will be fruit from that. You know, many years ago, we had a man and his girlfriend come to church. And they came to church at Federated. We were at the pavilion at the time. And he wanted to meet with me afterwards. On Monday night, he met with me. And he said, man, I couldn't believe your church. He said, I came walking into your church, and there were all these people that I used to party with and do things that were against the law with. And here they were sitting in church. He said, you know what? Federated reminded me of the land of the misfit toys. I mean, you think about that. People who were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, now they're in church loving Jesus. Again, it was fruitful. And that's what Paul is saying here. He's also saying this, that when you are fruitful, when the lives are being changed around you because you're living for the Lord, you want to know more about him. So he's saying it's kind of like a circular thing. He says, we walk a worthy life, and when we're walking that worthy life, we want to live more for him. We want to know more about him as we walk this worthy life. And then he tells us another way we walk the worthy life. It says in verse 11, may you be strengthened with all power, according to his glorious might, for all endurance and patience with joy. He tells us three things here in this verse. Number one, endurance. God will give us strength. God will give us endurance to go through the trials that you and I go through. All of us go through trials. I have a saying, you're either in one, you're coming out of one, or you're going into one. And that's true of life. And Paul says, you know what? When you walk a worthy life, you're going to have trials. God will give you the endurance to go through these trials. And then he also says patience. Now, there's two different words for patience that's used in the New Testament. One is for circumstances, and one is for people. The word that Paul uses here is endurance with people, with patience with people. There are some people that try to hurt us. There are some people that do wrong to us. And now, our natural response is to get even. But that's not the studied response. That's not the response that you and I are to have. And he says this. He says, God will give you the patience, the power, the endurance to get through that. The third thing he says in this verse is there will be joy. You know, when you're living for the Lord, you're walking, and you go through trials, you know that God is working. God is working in you. God is working in the trial. God is giving you strength. God is giving you patience. And when we know those things, it brings joy because we know that God is working. Remember, joy is for the heart. God gives us joy. It's not about our circumstances. It's about the joy in our heart. And we have joy when we know that God is working. Hey, thanks for joining us.